the Pledge of Allegiance.
Everybody, please stand. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
Thank you. That brings us to our moment of silence. If we could keep the following individuals who have passed away in our thoughts and prayers: Kathleen Lynch, retired Rogers High School teacher; Juanita French, retired Rogers High School teacher; John Johnson, grandfather of William Simmons, TMS custodian; Sarah Singfield, aunt of William Simmons, TMS custodian; Ralph McHugh, father-in-law of Michael Monahan, Rhode Island, Rogers High School assistant principal; Ralph Perry, uncle of Kim Bean, assistant superintendent and TMS principal. We'll now have a moment of silence. Thank you. Mrs. Nash, is there anybody signed up for public comment this evening?
We do not have anyone signed up for public comment tonight.
Okay. So that gets us right into the action items. The first action item is 3.1. It's a request for approval of resolution in support of the Newport City Council resolution of July 22nd, 2020, recognizing and honoring African American history in Rhode Island and urging the adoption of African American education in Rhode Island's K-12 schools starting in the 2021-2022 academic year. This has been sponsored by Ms. Winslow, Mrs. Neary, and Mrs. Boatwright. Is there a motion to approve the approval of the resolution in support of the City Council resolution?
So moved.
I believe it was made by Mrs. Neary, seconded by Mrs. Boland. Is there any discussion or anybody that would like to make a comment on the resolution?
I would
Ms.
like
Boatwright,
to.
go right ahead.
Yeah, I would like to. I think that the superintendent in the Newport Public Schools has done several things in this area, and so I think she might be able to speak to some of those things. But I would like to say that I think this is a very important thing to highlight African Americans and Blacks who have been very successful in life through Rhode Island history. I think that's a great positive move.
Becky? Louise, I'm sorry. Can we hold on 1 second? I'm just going to ask. There's a lot of feedback, so if everybody could mute themselves, that'd be great. Go ahead, Louisa. Sorry.
So I just said I think that we'd like to have the superintendent speak to. Well, I think that are we going to read the resolution first? Actually, would we like to do that? Sorry.
I can read it, Louisa.
Thank you.
All right. Hold on. Okay. Newport School Committee Resolution 2020-08-11, recognizing and honoring African American history in Rhode Island and urging the adoption of African American education in Rhode Island's K-12 schools starting in the 2021-2022 academic year. Whereas Rhode Island and the city of Newport holds a unique place in history with the establishment of its royal charter on July 8, 1663, that marked the first time that a sovereign leader signed a charter guaranteeing that individuals within a society were free to practice the religion of their choice without any interference from the government. And whereas Rhode Island became the first American colony to declare its independence from Great Britain on May 4th, 1776, it was also at the same time in history one of the most active slave ports in British North America, transporting thousands of enslaved Africans to the colony, with the first documented slave ship arriving at Newport in 1696. And whereas the contributions of African heritage people from all walks of life and their endeavors to learn and thrive throughout history and make unforgettable marks in our city, state, and nation as artists, scientists, educators, business people, influential thinkers, members of the faith community, athletes, and political and government leaders reflects the greatness of the state of Rhode Island. And whereas the 1696 Historical Commission was signed into law on July 1st, 2014, and was tasked with developing a comprehensive African American history curriculum for Rhode Island public schools from kindergarten through grade 12. And said commission, led by our Secretary of State and comprised of scholars, civic and educational leaders, developed and submitted a comprehensive report that included units of instruction and educational resources. And whereas, as an important resource for building history curriculum, the Rhode Island Black Heritage Society, the oldest African heritage society, has an extensive collection of documents, photographs, and artifacts from the African heritage people of Rhode Island, and works in collaboration with other historical societies across the state. And whereas, with the unifying call for racial reconciliation, social justice, and citizen equity being reflected across the state, nation, and world, the establishment of an African heritage curriculum in Rhode Island is long overdue. And whereas, remaining hopeful and confident about the path ahead and a time to acknowledge the courageous fight for the rights, liberties, and freedom for all Americans, the City Council of Newport encourages all citizens, educators, students, and families across the city and state to learn about the heritage and achievements of African Americans through appropriate educational programs and learning experiences. And therefore be it resolved that the Newport School Committee adopts this resolution to honor and recognize our city and state's great history and tremendous contributions made by citizens of African heritage people, and call on the Rhode Island General Assembly and Honorable Governor of the State of Rhode Island to enact legislation that recognizes the need for inclusive American history and authorizes the Rhode Island Department of Education to include African heritage history education in all public K through 12 schools starting in 2021-2022 academic year.
Nice job. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's the most I've ever spoken at a meeting.
That's a very long resolution. So to Louise's point, if Colleen would like to talk a little bit about, I know we've been working on changes and made changes, and Colleen's up to date on those. So if Dr. Jermaine would like to talk a little bit about that, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Newport has been, and it's through the hard work of our Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Bean, with the chairs at the high school, with the coordinators at the middle school, and it's with our grade level leaders at the elementary schools that are not only addressing what typically happens in schools during Black History Month, but also throughout the school year. At the high school, we have extensive course offerings that our chair, Colleen Turner, has shared with us, and we can also bring people back to share more. But she also has an international studies program that also speaks to the history of Black leaders throughout the world, and they come visit, talk with our classmates. We also have at the middle school, we have different courses that deal with the Great Migration. They deal with the African American studies that our courses offer at the high school. Throughout our curriculum changes, we have tried to, and we continue to make sure that all our books and all our curriculum are up to date and reflective of our community. And that's something we need to continue to work. But I think there's so much I can share with you that I really think when school starts, we should bring our leaders, the people who have done the work, to share out what they're doing in the schools, because I think that's very important. There's the curriculum, and then there's also other work we're doing to be able to make sure we support all our families. And to hear all voices of our children as well. So I'm going to say next month I'll bring back a more robust group to share with you what's going on. But first and foremost, I do want to thank Keith and Teresa Stokes. They have been working on this for a very long time. And when I first arrived in Newport with Mr. Stokes, we had a conversation about introducing more of this into our schools. He's already working with our students, and I believe that's at Thompson right now, integrating some of the work and visiting some of the sites, I'll say, throughout the city to help share those experiences with our children. So I'm glad to say that Newport has done quite a bit of work in this area, and like anything else, we can always get better. So I applaud the support of this resolution, and I look forward to future work. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, discussion?
May I say something?
Sure, I'd go right ahead.
Right. It was nice to see the resolution come out of the city council, and obviously, as the Stokes have been working on it for a very long time, it was long overdue. And it's a nice gesture from the city council, but obviously the work happens at our level, at the school level, at the superintendent's level, at the curriculum level. And I think what I don't want to be forgotten as we pass this resolution and as it moves up the food chain and maybe eventually gets implemented, what I don't want us to forget, and I've said that in an email before, is that African American history is American history. And so making it an elective tells the students, all the students, you can choose to learn about this or not. But incorporating the work, there's nothing wrong with having the elective, certainly. But I think it needs to be more prevalent in all of our history, essentially kindergarten through 12th grade, that when we talk about American history, Black and brown folks are not an afterthought. They're an integral part of the founding of this nation, whether or not it's pretty. Certainly early, it's not a pretty history, but it is still the history of the United States. So I just don't want to lose track as our school leaders start thinking through curricula, that just adding on special electives on African American history, like that doesn't do what the movement is asking, which is to recognize that it is history. It is not it is American history. It is not an extra part of history. It is not something that you just learn. Frankly, it's same with women's history. Women's history is not a part of American history. It is American history. And so that as we look for tools, as we look for curriculum that we purchase, as we look for books that we purchase, that those books reflect all of American history and not just great man theory and not just war theory. So that's all I want to say.
And I have to say the best person is Department Chair Turner, because as part of our requirements of U.S. history, it is embedded in there as part of American history. So that's in addition to theirs. So I just want to be clear on that. But you are absolutely correct. I agree.
Go ahead, Sandra.
Yeah. I was glad to hear Mrs. Neary use the word incorporated, because that was what I had put down, that too often we take the shortest month of the year where we have days off and say that's Black History Month. And it's people, like I said, been saying so many times, we're all minorities really in our particular population. I really would have liked to have seen this as a joint resolution from the council and the school committee, because I was pleased to hear one of the council members really mentioning all of the different points that the superintendent just mentioned. And it has to be emphasized, brought to people's attention constantly almost. And it's not instruction of this sort or discussions of these sorts are really not should be isolated even to just the social studies curriculum. I would imagine it would be in science, in math, in language arts, English literature, all of these areas. It can be done. Again, this has been out for quite a while, but still, it has been incorporated, maybe not as formally as it will be if it's a curriculum. That they're looking at the next academic year, I was just wondering, has any curriculum work been done, or formal curriculum work on this on the state level? I'm just wondering about that. Or is this still just being discussed?
I'm sorry, Dr. Flowers, I missed your question. It went in and out.
Oh, okay, my question is, and because with all of these things going on now, it's tough, but has the Department of Ed really laid the groundwork for this new curriculum?
Not at this time, no.
Not at this time. I would like to see how the Newport Public Schools really involved in working on this. I'm sure some people say, oh, good grief, we have so much to do. But I would certainly want to see input from right here in Newport in preparing that curriculum.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Not you don't have to do this yourself, but there must be some way that things can be done. Yeah.
We do have, sorry, is everyone finished?
No, I know, I'm aware. I was going to let the school committee finish up. So
Thank you.
Anybody else from the school committee with any comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to make
Okay,
the comment. It sort of wraps around both what Mrs. Neary said and Dr. Flowers, but that it's really important that it's mandatory K to 12, that all students hear the same thing in this thing, and that it's not like some teachers and not. So that's why I think it's so important to be part of the curriculum. And I think that to have really Rhode Island's history embedded in it with people, places, and things to really understand what happened here is absolutely critical. And I think that's a great thing. So that's my comment. And I'm very proud of what Newport has already put in and looking for it to go further. Thank you.
All righty. Any other comments from the school committee? All right, Stephanie, go right ahead.
I just have a question because there are a few words I would like to make a motion to change in the resolution, and I just don't know how and when to do that. So just let me know, please, before we go forward.
I will do that. I'm going to once we're done with the school committee, I know there's a couple of people from the public who would like to comment on this. And then before we vote, we can work on all that, the language stuff.
Thank you.
We'll just say a little more comment. Ms. Nash, I believe you have some public comment.
Yes, thank you. I have Tara Mello, Thompson Middle School teacher, who would like to comment.
Alrighty.
Tara?
We're not.
Tara, you may be on mute. Okay, we'll see if we can establish a connection with Tara. Dr. Bean, are you on the line?
Yes, Mrs. Nash. I was just emailing Tara because I know that she had planned to speak tonight as the social studies curriculum liaison at Thompson. She's been working with the Stokes, and she has been doing a lot of work with them, as well as just the work that they've been doing at Thompson in terms of integrating the African American history into the curriculum and making sure it's viewed as the American history and not delegated once, just to the February month. So that is definitely the work that's happening at Thompson, as well as the work that Colleen, Hermes, Taylor's work at the high school. In addition, the work that we're doing K to 8 and eventually K to 12 with the Department of Ed, with the adoption of the ELA curriculum, that any curriculum that we're vetting, we have to run through a cultural relevance protocol for the curriculum, so that we're making sure that we're selecting texts that are relevant to our students. So that's part of the ELA work as well. So it's not just through history, it's also the text and the literature that we're looking at with the adoption of the ELA program. But I was really anxious for Tara to talk with you so that she could share more about what she's doing with Keith Stokes and with the program that he's set up. So I know I'm going to check my email again and see.
So do you have any contact with her, Kath?
Yeah, she's saying, I don't think they can hear me. I'm off mute, but no one seems to be able to hear me, is what she's saying.
Yeah, well, we certainly couldn't hear her, so.
Yeah.
Well,
we can save her for September if you want.
Yeah, certainly we can save for September, have her come back. I wouldn't mind hearing from her if we do get that worked out. We're gonna do a few things with this resolution before we finish with it. Also, she could certainly email the members of the school committee. We'll also have her back in September, but in the meanwhile, or the short term, she could also email the school committee with her remarks as well. But
sure.
If we get her back, go ahead, Kathy. Do we have her back? Kathy?
I do not yet.
Okay. All right.
No.
So let's go. I believe Stephanie wanted to make a couple of edits, which we can do that. We can amend the resolution. So if Stephanie would like to discuss the language changes she'd like to make, go right ahead.
Okay. Okay, I'm off mute. All right. In the second whereas, I just think there's a small typo. It currently says slave ports in British North American, and I believe it should say slave ports in British North America, comma. So drop the N and replace with a comma. And then in the last resolved paragraph, the only resolved paragraph, second line, tremendous contributions made by citizens of African heritage people. But I think to be consistent with the language of the resolution, it should read tremendous contributions made by African heritage people. So strike the citizens of.
Okay, so it would be, yep, go ahead.
Oh, so that's two, and then there are two more in another paragraph. So tell me when.
Yep, go ahead, because what we're going to do is we'll vote on those as amendments to the resolution. We'll vote them. If they pass, then we'll vote on the resolution. So just make all your changes that you suggest, and then we can vote on all of them as a package.
Okay, all right, two more. So it's the last whereas paragraph. Remaining hopeful and confident, et cetera, et cetera. I would suggest we say the Newport School Committee instead of the City Council of Newport encourages all citizens, educators, students, and families across the city. And continuing on, to learn about the heritage and achievements of African Americans through appropriate educational programs, strike and learning experiences, and insert that teach African American history as American history. So I could read that whole paragraph to you with the changes if you would like.
So the most important thing I want to check on is that, Kathy, did you catch all of those changes as Stephanie was speaking?
Yes, I have the changes. Thank you.
Okay. So Stephanie, if you did want to read what it changes that paragraph to, that's the most substantial one.
Okay.
So if you want to change what it changes that paragraph to read it, just for the record,
Sure.
in clarity, and then we can vote on them or
Okay.
have comment as well.
Okay. Remaining hopeful and confident about the path ahead and a time to acknowledge the courageous fight for the rights, liberties, and freedom for all Americans, the Newport School Committee encourages all citizens, educators, students, and families across the city and state to learn about the heritage and achievements of African Americans through appropriate educational programs that teach African American history as American history. And therefore be it, etc.
Very good. Stephanie has made a motion to amend the resolution. Is there a second to the amendment?
Second.
Oh dear.
Okay, so seconded by Ida Neary. Is there any discussion or comment on the recommended changes? Okay, not seeing any, I will ask that Mrs. Nash conduct a roll call vote on the amendments. And if the amendments pass, then we will vote on the passage of the resolution after that. So, Mrs. Nash.
Mr. Gomes,
Aye.
Mrs. Neary,
Aye.
Mrs. Boatright,
Aye.
Mrs. Boland,
Aye.
Dr. Flowers,
Aye.
Mrs. Win.
Aye. Sorry, I didn't hear my name.
6-0.
Okay. So now we have the amendment passed to the resolution. So now we have a motion and a second on the resolution. Any other discussion before we vote or comments?
I do have Tara Mello back on the line.
We'd be happy to hear from her
If you'd like to hear
her.
from All right, I'm going to try her right now. Tara?
I don't think we're hearing her still.
No, I don't. No, I'm not hearing her either.
No. Good next month. Next month.
Tara, if you can hear me, try to hit *6 on your phone.
Hello?
I think her, Tara.
Yes,
All
can
right.
you hear me?
There
Oh,
we go.
sorry.
Thank you.
Great.
Hi,
All right, I'm
everybody.
just-
Sorry.
Tara,
Technical
just 1 second. I'm just going to ask the school committee members to, everybody, if you can mute, it'll make it a lot easier to hear Tara. I know we had some conversation, so we're going to mute, and Tara, it's all yours. Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you so much just want to say thank you for having me. So I've been teaching the 7th grade curriculum for over 20 years. Dr. Browner and I have been a part of it, and I'm the curriculum liaison there right now. Our curriculum has always very easily incorporated African-American history. We start with the Civil War and move up through present day. So we deal with the end of slavery and segregation into the civil rights movement. And so that has just been an easy incorporation. Obviously we take time aside on Martin Luther King weekend or the Black History Month to highlight certain things. I'd like to see it more integrated throughout the entire, the middle school, as opposed to just being focused on in the 7th grade. For almost the past year, I've been working with the Tennis Hall of Fame on a grant in conjunction with the Rhode Island Black Storytellers, with Valerie Tutson, Rochelle Coleman, Doug Stark at the Tennis Hall of Fame. And it focuses around the history of Black tennis in Newport. Obviously, we have the Tennis Hall of Fame, which is a great resource. I've been working with them for years on different projects. And in the course of this year, obviously, things have changed and shifted a little bit of our focus of the grant. because the idea was to have the storytellers come in, focus on African American tennis players, make a connection not only, with Newport, but now we're sort of pushing it a little bit further to talk about social justice and the importance of sports in the Black community and just the links between all of that and then some of the things going on today. So we're in the process of working on that with them now. I've had several meetings with them. And we're just looking forward to bringing that to not only, obviously, with me focusing on 7th grade, but definitely expanding that into, other parts of our curriculum at Thompson Middle School with the other grades as well.
Great. I'm not sure, was that the end of your remarks or did we lose Tara?
No, I'm still here. I wasn't sure if anybody had any other questions.
Thank you, Tara.
You're welcome.
Let me see if does anybody have any questions? Okay, I think Ida has a question. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks, Tara, for speaking. I was wondering what suggestions you would have, because right now you're at the 7th grade, right? What suggestions you would have for 5, 6, like 5, 6, and then 8th, or to incorporate the topic. Just, do you have anything that you've thought about before that'd be great to do that you haven't been able to implement yet?
Just to try, we need to sit down and look at their curriculum. I mean, obviously it's something with a particular curriculum. For example, 8th grade is geography and ancient history. So it doesn't necessarily, U.S. American history doesn't necessarily tie into that, but it's a subject obviously that can be kind of touched throughout each of the subject areas or each of the grades. So I'd like to sit with all of the people in those grades. Kim, Bean, and I have discussed, I think that social studies, in years past, maybe it wasn't the focus, we're focusing on our, reading and writing and mathematics, obviously very important. So we kind of want to take a swing back to making sure that social studies in general is discussed again, specifically with topics like this, specifically with what is going on in the world today, and speaking with those other social studies teachers and kind of getting their ideas on how they can incorporate into their curriculums. And that's really what I'm looking forward to doing. I had been curriculum liaison years ago, had stepped away from it for a while. This was my first year back, and obviously a lot changed this year. So, not the year we were expecting. So I'm looking forward to maybe meeting with my colleagues this upcoming school year, my other social studies colleagues, and being able to work with them on some ideas on how we can incorporate that throughout the curriculum.
Okay. No, that's great. I mean, that's any effort is good at this point. And as I've been saying for the past few months to everyone, 400 years of history cannot be undone by 15 weeks of a curriculum. Exactly. So everybody so to take the pressure off, and we just need to start. So as long as we start, we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Tara?
Ray, one more, Louisa.
Maybe. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I wanted to ask, one of the things that I find very compelling in this resolution too is just bringing forth Rhode Islanders and African American people who have done cool and unique things, which you've talked a little bit about with your relationship with the Tennis Hall of Fame and so on. But, in history and in English and in all, really in almost any class, you can bring up people who have gone above and beyond. And I was wondering if you could talk specifically about your work with Teresa and Keith Stokes and whether some of that has already come out.
Working with Keith Stokes, I've just specifically been doing it with the Tennis Hall of Fame on this specific grant that we're working on, but we have talked about broadening it more, specifically dealing with Newport. There's so much rich history here in Newport that these kids can connect to. I brought up just the idea of even getting the kids outside, because I know that's a big part of if we're back in school, being able to go outside and walk around is a great thing to do. And just seeing and actually knowing what happened around here, being able to make connections. Keith has shared some of his personal family history and his connections to Newport, which has been fantastic. But, doing that, taking, the what happens locally and then broadening it to what's going on in the world today. And like I said, the grant that we're doing with the Tennis Hall of Fame is a work in progress, and we've kind of been adjusting it as time's gone on. And just, hoping to bring that, like I said, the Rhode Island storytellers into that specific thing and bringing that to Thompson, hopefully this year.
Right. I just look at it as the role models too, that on both sides, of things too, because there have been, we see Mayor Paul Gaines and things like that.
Absolutely.
And so on. So a lot of
Yes,
cool
it's all been discussed. And like I said, our focus with the Tennis Hall of Fame was, started with tennis. We kind of expanded a little bit to sports, and then, it's hard not to absolutely talk about all these other, influential people as well.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments for Tara while we have her on the line? I don't think I see anybody else. So thank you very much, Tara, and look forward to hearing how the curriculum develops as you keep working on it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Have a good night.
You too.
So, Mrs. Nash, do we have anybody else that would like to speak?
I do not.
All right. In that case, I think it would be in order to have a vote on the passage of the resolution as amended. So if you could conduct a roll call vote, Mrs. Nash.
Sure. Mr. Gomes?
Aye.
Ms. Sneary?
Aye.
Ms. Boatright?
Aye.
Ms. Boland?
Aye.
Dr. Flowers?
Aye.
Ms. Winslow?
Aye.
Thank you. 6-0.
All righty. Thank you very much. The next item is 3.2. It's request for approval of a contract between Newport Public Schools and Sargent Rehabilitation Center. Is there a motion to approve the contract as presented?
So moved.
Motion made by Dr. Flowers, seconded by Stephanie Winslow. Yep, Miss Winslow. So I know there's a couple of questions that I've seen go back and forth. I'm not sure if Colleen, or do we have somebody like, one of my questions to start off with is, I know it says that it's for 14,000. I know it's budgeted through federal funds, but then one of the answers we saw today was that it's for 9,000. So there still seems to be some confusion as to whether it's 9 or 14,000. And then if somebody wanted to give a little bit of background on it before discussion. So,
Director
Dr.
Andrade,
Devine?
thank you, Mr. Gomes. Director Andrade's there. She's raising her hand. I can see her. Go right ahead, Director Andrade.
Hi. Yeah, so Sargent Center, that contract has been part of the grant, the federal grant in Newport for several years now. We only contract for the 9,000 portion. The 4,000 is a different option that people can take. It's not both, it's one or the other. So it is funded through the grant. It provides professional development at all the schools, and legal consultation around special education, particularly for me. And it's okay, Ida, you can giggle. That's okay.
I mean, yeah. Yeah.
And then it also assists when writing policies, or if there's new regulations or legal decisions that happen. We get regular updates through the Regional Resource Center on how those might apply or affect our practice. Ray, you're on mute. I think you were trying to talk, but you were muted.
We may have lost him again.
Is he still here?
He's still there, but he's still muted. And he's just the R again, no video.
Interesting.
This happened another time when he had to sign off and come back on.
Does anyone have any other questions about that?
No, I mean, I think it's really helpful because it's so complicated. It can get so confusing. So it's been nice to be in meetings when we have questions and you're like backed up with legal, like legal information and policy information, because it's overwhelming and it's like puzzles. So I mean, I certainly have appreciated it going, oh, okay, good. There's like somebody looking over the big alphabet soup that is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oops. We've lost the chair.
I don't know if we're going to have to continue or.
Right.
Does he know he's off?
Has anybody texted him?
No, I'm doing it now. I hadn't thought about it.
Right. What?
All right. Right.
You could just type into the chat if.
Yeah, right. Tell him to send in his vote.
Yeah. All right. There we go. I wonder if he doesn't know that he's not on. Well, I mean, he would know, right?
I think I could hear his voice sort of trail off when he first left. Or when he has left the meeting now.
Now he's left the meeting. So now we can come back.
Right.
Now's your opportunity to get out anything you want to say.
Oh, there you go. He's calling. He's calling me. Why is he calling me? Why are you calling me? Oh, Lord. Okay, hang on.
And ask you to take over.
Yeah.
No.
What?
I think I'm back.
You're back.
There you go. All right.
Here we are. Oh,
Great.
Okay.
here he is.
There you
Okay.
All right.
Back?
I'm back.
I don't have any.
Candace?
I can't hear anybody.
All right. So Director Andrade answered the questions. Can you hear me, Mr. Gomes?
I'm going to try to get off and come back on again. I'll be right back. I can't hear anybody.
Okay.
So let me try this. Hold on.
Huh.
I wonder if he has to call in with his phone and put plugs in his ears.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of times video is what kills your connection.
Now I'm back. Here we go.
He's back.
I've got it all. I couldn't get off. I lost everything. I could hear everybody, but it wouldn't let me get off the call to get back on. So I had to shut everything down and start over again. So I'm back. I heard
You heard
everything.
all the nasty things we said about you? You heard all of that?
I did. See,
Dang it.
you can see I'm smiling. See that?
Oh, man.
So I heard that Candace did a great job stalling for me. Thank you for asking if there was any other questions. So are there any other questions before we vote? Comments, questions?
No.
Already seeing none. Mrs. Nash, if you could do a roll call vote, please.
Certainly. Mr. Gomes,
Aye.
Ms. Neary,
Aye.
Ms. Boatright,
Aye.
Ms. Boland,
Aye.
Dr. Flowers,
Aye.
and Ms. Winslow.
Aye.
Thank you. 6-0.
You're on mute, Ray.
Okay. I'm not having a good technology night here tonight. So 3.3, it's a request for approval of the contract between Newport Public Schools and Perkins School for the Blind. Is there a motion to approve the contract? Mrs. Boland, is there a second? Louisa?
Second.
Okay. There's a motion and a second, and I think Director Andrade is still on if she wanted to give us a little overview of what this entails and what it's for.
Sure. We have a student who is at the Rhode Island School for the Deaf who requires services for the blind as well. So we previously were working with the Sherlock Center, but their rates and billing are not what they should be. So so we went with
We agree to disagree.
yes, with them, not with each other. So I reached out to the Perkins School for the Blind, and their rates are actually cheaper than the Sherlock Center and are more in line with what we feel is appropriate. So they're now providing those services at the School for the Deaf for the student. I believe that contract is only for the summer programming, and that we'll get a new contract again for the 2021 school year.
Okay.
Excellent. Are there any questions from anybody on the request? Not seeing or hearing any. Mrs. Nash, if you could do a roll call vote for the motion.
Sure. Mr. Gomes,
Aye.
Mrs. Neary,
Aye.
Ms. Boatright,
Aye.
Mrs. Boland,
Aye.
Dr. Flowers,
Aye.
and Ms. Winslow.
Aye.
Thank you. That's 6-0.
All right. Item 3.4, we are going to pull that and we'll bring that back for next month's. There's still a little bit of work to do on that, the request. So 3.4 will be pulled and brought back next month. Next item, therefore, would be 3.5, request for approval of the revised 2020-2021 school calendar. Is there a motion to approve the calendar as presented this evening?
No, Mr.
Yeah,
Gomes,
can we pull
Mr.
that?
Chair, I would request you pull the calendar based on information that just came out today.
Right.
All righty. Well, we will pull the calendar and put that back on for September because that's obviously information I haven't seen yet that came out today. So,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you missed that. Wow.
okay.
Watch the news.
For the public, I should, in
Right.
case anyone's listening.
Yes, please.
So today, we were informed, it is not official, but tomorrow, I believe the governor is going to be announcing that students will return to school on September 14th. Teachers will get an additional days of September 9th, 10th, and 11th for training and re-entry education. So that's the latest and greatest from today.
So as I've been telling everybody through all of this, you got to keep paying attention and listening. So there's the latest and greatest. I'm sure that may even change, but thanks for that. So we'll pull 3.4 and 3.5. That brings us to 3.6. I believe we're still going to pave the parking lot at Pell Elementary School. So is there a motion to approve 3.6 as presented this evening?
Yeah.
So moved.
I believe moved by Dr. Flowers, seconded by Ms. Boatright. Are there any questions or discussions or I think Mr. Young is with us, so if he wanted to give us a brief overview of what this is, and go right ahead if you're there, Mr. Young. I don't see him, but
can you hear me?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
He's on the
Okay.
phone.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So so I know Tom Harris put a lot of extensive time and studies and research into this, and he had put together the 3 courses of action and nominated course of action 2, which one was the lowest cost and had more of the pros, which is additional parking, which is clearly delineated. It can be funded with the repair and maintenance funds. It'll be done before school opens. And after the permanent parking is in place, the grass will be able to be restored. So after many conversations and looking into it and meetings, we find that course of action is best for us at this time.
All right. Thank you. Are there questions?
Mr. Chair?
Questions or comments? Miss Winslow, go right ahead.
Sure. Just in that, the recommended actions, there was a mention about maybe additional cost to, sorry, I'm trying to pull up the right document.
Annual maintenance.
The millings, the compacted millings would need to be regraded and augmented each summer. So I just was wondering if, let's say we have to have this parking for 2 or 3 or 4 years, is what might be the anticipated cost of that? It's not going to be $11,000 again, is it?
No, it's not going to be 11,000 every year. Once we get that first one in, it'll be a minimal cost, and hopefully it won't, be a 2 or 3 year hold.
I hope so too, but
yeah,
I'm wearing my Bobby Leary hat.
All right.
Something has to.
So just a minimal, I mean, out of.
Yeah, I don't have the exact, I didn't get that, have time to get that information, but I know it's not nearly the 11,000 cost.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? I don't think so. So if there are none other, Mrs. Nash, could you do a roll call vote to approve the parking at Pell School?
Yes, Mr. Gomes,
Aye.
Mrs. Neary,
Aye.
Mrs. Boatright,
Aye.
Mrs. Boland,
Aye.
Dr. Flowers,
Aye.
Ms. Winslow.
Aye.
Thank you. I have 6-0.
Thank you. Next item is 3.7, request for approval of the food service management agreement extension between Newport Public Schools and Compass Group USA. Is there a motion to approve the request as presented tonight?
So moved.
Made by Mrs. Boland. Is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Flowers. And I'm going to let Mrs. Boland say a few words about this.
Yes, so this is, we're heading into the last year of a 3-year contract with a 2-year extension, 2 one-year extensions that you can take advantage of. And we're working, with Chartwell's. Going next year, we will have to go out for a new contract, or we could also take advantage of any state contract they may put out. But right now, every year we go by the rules of the original contract, which at this point was 4 years ago. We use those numbers that we guarantee them. And this year, we didn't quite, well, obviously because of COVID, did not hit the guaranteed number of meals served because of, everything changed in March. And in March, we actually went to where we used the summer meals program plan. So everything switched so that for the first time, we've ever during the school year, kids did not have to be qualified. We fed anybody under the age of 18, and my understanding is we fed adults too, meals. So we ended up not doing too badly. They still made a profit for us this year because of all the different, meals they served on the weekends and everything else. Mm-hmm. But going into the new year, we're going to have to collect all of the required applications for lunch. And those are going to be due by October 15th. So we got a lot of work ahead of us because this could be very difficult getting those all out this year from everyone. So anyway, I'm recommending that we they've been really good to work with, Chartwell's, especially Cindy King has done an outstanding job through all of this. You just go to her and ask her to do something and she makes it happen. And all of the people, I want to say that, they've done incredible work in the cafeteria this year, getting those meals out. And so every year there's, and this is, RIDE has a template that you have to follow. So these administration and management fees are acceptable to increase or acceptable to ride. So that's what we have to do this year, is give them the, we don't have to, but I'm asking tonight that we approve this contract for the next year. And what we're approving is an administration fee increase and the management fee increase, which I provided for you. Any questions?
I don't see any, Becky, so.
I have
Oh,
one.
Ida, go ahead. Go ahead, Ida.
It's just like, how is Chartwell's, did Cindy give you any kind of details on how Chartwell's was doing at other schools in the pandemic? Just in general, like how are they managing, how they were managing the issue of meals, not just physically like getting meals to people, but in terms of money. Do you have any?
No, but I do have a question. I have a Karen Weatherall is works for the state of Rhode Island, and she's kind of our representative for health and wellness groups. And I do have a phone call. I've actually been trying to call her all week and have not gotten a call back, because I'm very interested to hear what other districts are doing, especially how they're going to go about collecting those lunch forms, because we're going to have some really, because we want them from all the kids that are getting, working remotely. So I do have a phone call into her to find out what's going on.
So it's interesting, Becky. One of the things I'm sitting here thinking of on the forms is possibly looking at mailing them out with return envelopes, that they could be mailed back type of thing. That might take a little bit of planning to do it ahead of time, because, obviously, but we may have to come up with some scenario where we mail them out and, put the emphasis on how important they are, that we get them back, and hopefully that helps. But anyhow, that is certainly going to be an issue.
But we do have a meeting coming up with Mr. Gonsalves and Colleen and Cindy King to see if we can figure this out, some ways to approach it.
Well, I mean, if there's going to be still any busing, I would say, and we're going to send, the principals are going, hopefully, maybe are going to send emails about, here's your teacher, here's what your bus route. If there's mailing that's already going out, then I would put that paperwork in that mailing, instead of spending extra money. If we're going to do it anyway, let's put it in there. Let's make it a big fat, we've talked about this, make it a big fat envelope of everything that needs to be signed and returned.
Right, but I'm also going to just suggest that last year, I know there was a very concerted effort done that took a couple of months, and I think we're just going to have to really work hard on that one to see how that first packet goes. Then there may need to be some mailers to those who didn't come, and then some follow-up with individual calls and so on. So, because it's really important to get that the funding in.
And remember that we have hired a meals advocate for Thompson, Rogers, and they were worth their weight in gold this year with what they did. So I'm sure they're going to be helping us out with this, this next year. Right.
So that's what so we have to use a similar strategy, just COVID modified.
Right.
So if I may, just, can I share something, please?
Since you said please, yes.
So I have had the initial discussions with some of the oversight body, RIDE, the Food and Nutrition Group, and we're floating the ideas of sending, obviously this is going to be more than one effort to get in all of the required docs. If I recall correctly, I think I was still well into January with our final push, where we were in the 90% range of receiving back. And that's going to take place again this year in a different method. RIDE has explored the idea that we'd be able to accept the documents electronically. But with that said, I don't have all the procedures ironed out just yet. I think a repository email address would be appropriate, so that way we can allocate periods of time to just dedicate to this work, and individuals aren't bombarded as they come in. Now, I don't know how successful that's going to be. I think that we're going to have to incorporate the hard copies, accept it through the email, as well as people just coming in person and delivering them. So I just wanted to share that. If the schools were open, I meant hand delivering. Okay, that's what I meant. Okay. That's all I wanted to share.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing or hearing none, Mrs. Nash, if you could do a roll call vote for approval of the food service agreement as presented.
Sure. Mr. Gomes,
Aye.
Mrs. Neary,
Aye.
Mrs. Boatright,
Aye.
Mrs. Boland,
Aye.
Dr. Flowers,
Aye.
and Mrs. Winslow.
Aye.
Thank you. 6-0.
Very good. Thank you. And again, that's to echo Becky's comments. Cindy does a super job and has done a super job during the COVID providing meals towards the end of the year. And I'm sure they'll ramp up and do a great job in the beginning too. So as we start. So thank you to them. Next item is 3.8. It's a request for approval of the deficit reduction plan. Is there a motion to approve the deficit reduction plan as presented this evening?
Yes, I motion to approve.
Ms. Boatright, motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms.
Second.
Winslow, okay. And I know Ronnie didn't go far, so if Mr. Gonzalez would like to give us some information and take some questions on this, that'd be great.
Hi, thank you for your time again. If I may just open up for questions, I think I don't want to confuse anything that's provided in the document, as if it's not confusing enough already, but I've tried to itemize the different components in the requests, the process we have to follow. So please ask questions.
So, yeah, that's perfect. And please ask questions. Just don't really have to ask permission, just kind of speak, but just let people finish speaking before you start. Give a few minutes, few seconds of. So if anybody has a question or comment, go right ahead. So Becky, I saw Becky first. So go Becky first.
So I think when you made the motion, Louisa, didn't you mean to say option A?
Yes. Yes, I was that's what I was raising my hand for. I was going to describe the option that we were going to go with, as well as the reason why, which I'd be happy to do now.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go right
So
ahead.
we as the finance subcommittee, Becky, Dr. Flowers, and I met with Mr. Gonzalez and Dr. Germain to go through this, and we would like to recommend option A, which is to take the surplus and apply the July 19 fund balance deficit of 97,853, and there was a restatement of the 2018 of 39,142, which would then adjust our fund balance to $736,424. And why we want to do that is because we were flat funded by the city when we had asked them for over $400,000. We are still going into the 2021 school year not knowing what our operations is going to be. So there are many, many outstanding expenses that we do not know. And third, the state, and I just talked to Rep. Abney yesterday, I guess it was, and they still do not know when they're going to be able to state what the actual state revenues are going to be. So we just have it in there slightly unconfirmed. So we believe that we should stay with the agreement we have with the city today and not prepay funds that are above and beyond our current agreement.
Okay, we can take care of that in a minute as far as the formality of are there any other questions or comments? So we can deal with seeing none. What we can do is we'll do it similar to what we did with the resolution on the resolution. We'll make an amended motion to amend the motion to accept option A as the option for the deficit reduction plan. Is there a motion to accept option A as the option?
So moved.
Becky, Mrs. Boland, seconded by Ms. Boatright.
Yep.
Any discussion on that or questions? Seeing none, I'll ask Mrs. Nash to do a roll call vote to select option A as the option.
Yes, Mr. Gomes,
Aye.
Mrs. Neary,
Aye.
Mrs. Boatright,
Aye.
Mrs. Boland,
Aye.
Dr. Flowers,
He's muted.
Sandra, you're muted.
Dr. Flowers. Thank you.
Aye.
And Ms. Winslow,
Aye.
I have 6-0.
Okay. So now what we will do is option A. So it'll be a little bit redundant, but just to dot our I's and cross our T's, we will now vote on the deficit reduction plan utilizing option A as the option. So Mrs. Nash, if you could do a roll call vote.
Certainly. Mr. Gomes,
Aye.
Mrs. Neary,
Aye.
Mrs. Boatright,
Aye.
Mrs. Boland,
Aye.
Dr. Flowers,
Aye.
and Ms. Winslow.
Aye.
Perfect.
Thank you.
all.
6-0. Thank you.
Thank you. So that moves us into section 4, which is the discussion. And the first item up under discussion this evening is the pre-K update. So if Dr. Jermaine could give us an update on how we're making out with the pre-K moves and reconfigurations, that'd be great.
Thank you, Mr. Gomes. We're right on schedule. Actually, everything's in place. Teachers have been moved. Their supplies are there. Desks are being set up. Extra storage has been provided. We have 2 more containers arriving at Pell for the multiple, not only out of the PK rooms, but also out of the other classrooms, desks and chairs. Let's see, the parking, as you know, that was one of the goals for moving PK back. The parking is underway, additional parking, and the storage. So everything seems to be on track. We have plans for how we'll handle PK coming back, depending upon whether we come back to full in-person or hybrid. And at this point in time, for our PK students, we will just be having our PK students come in for the first month. There'll be a transitioning period with them. And then their comparable model peers will be coming later around October 1st. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead, Miss Winslow.
Yeah, I was going back through older PK updates and I just saw this a little while ago, but there was a comment about moving the safe room and that it couldn't be moved. I'm not sure if I'll be able to find the meeting. It was maybe 1 or 2 meetings ago. So I was just wondering if all the pre-K classrooms are set, if the safe room is set, if there really truly isn't anything else going on, I guess.
Well, there's a lot going on. I think most of the logistics have been addressed. There's a lot going on.
Sure.
Tracy, Principal Westman's on, so that detail as far as what was the next step. I don't know if Principal Westman wants to just share what the decision was on that. I know we did not move it to where she was originally thinking.
So we were going to move it to a classroom across the hallway so we could utilize rebuild the bathroom in the current BSP room. The BSP room, as it is in one of our classrooms, used to be a pre-K room which had a bathroom in it. And then we just took the bathroom structure and closed off the plumbing and then made it because it was the framing was already there. Mm-hmm. So that's how it was. But then when the pre-K, we wanted them back, we were going to try to utilize the bathroom and look into it. We were originally going to move the safe room across the hallway, but in looking at the structure, and Ronnie G can speak more to that because they came in with Tom Harab, and it just wasn't going to work. So what we decided to do is, in the future, if the addition gets added on to Pell, we thought we would create both BSP rooms that way, in the addition, and then we'd be able to open up that bathroom with the pre-K in the future. It just wasn't able, the structure, and Ronnie G can speak to that because they were the ones that kind of looked at the construction of it. So.
We had issues, noted issues with HVAC, and I believe we had a concern about running a power supply at the time. So those were our constraints at the time, and they were just kind of bigger than we originally planned. So we modified. That's all I have to add. Thank you.
Do we have any sense of, well, one thing, when we build the addition, not if we build the addition. So that's gonna be a when. And do we have any sense of our numbers for pre-K at all for fall?
So right now, and I don't know if Candace is still on, right now we're not bringing in peer models at the beginning. We're just bringing in our special needs students.
Okay.
So right now our classrooms are small. I think they're between 4 and 10 in each class roughly. And then once we kind of get adjusted and see how it works, then we'll bring in the peer models. But we just wanted to start small first and kind of get adjusted and stuff. So that's kind of where we're at. I mean, our numbers were about, I would say about 60 last year with all 3 classes. So, you know,
okay,
that's where we're at right now.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. I don't think we do. So thank you, everybody, for the update. Thank you. So we'll move on to 4.2. I'm not quite sure. It's the ever-moving reentry plan, as I found out tonight, changed unbeknownst to me. So I'm not sure, Dr. Jermaine, do you still want to talk a little bit on this? Some of the stuff is pertinent, you know, regardless of the date. And I'm not sure whether that means some of our town hall discussions that we had scheduled and other things are going to be pushed off a little bit with the news that we all found out tonight. So, Dr. Jermaine, if you want to go ahead.
So this is a very, as we've said from the beginning, it's a very fluid situation, and we have to be flexible. We do and will continue to have our town hall meeting for August 13th. We did get an indication that the governor may not say anything on August 17th. We'll know more tomorrow because they are watching the numbers very carefully and they're concerned about any kind of spikes. Plus, there's also, at least in my meeting with my fellow superintendents, there's a concern and a worry about if we're going to go based on the numbers in the communities, there may be an equity issue from the get-go, as far as the students being put automatically in distance learning in some communities and not in others. So that's a bigger conversation we're having that just literally started today. During that conversation around noon or a little after, we did hear the possibility, and then during our meeting, Channel 10 announced the governor had said something that students would be returning on September 14th. So that's where we are. Tomorrow afternoon, we're hoping to hear a lot more from the governor's report, her weekly announcements. I do know it's Dr. Fauci. He's going to be with her on Thursday for her 3 to 4 conversation in the afternoon. And that's kind of where we're at. So we're taking the data we have now. We're looking at how many already opted for distance learning. We're looking at the transportation, and we literally are just starting to look at that data to determine plans. But our reentry plans haven't changed yet. They are what they are. They're posted, and we'll keep everyone informed as best as possible.
Are there any questions for the superintendent? I will say that along with the superintendent that I do have one or two a week meetings with the chairs of the school committee. We had one the other night, and I will say 2 things. I've gotten very good comments on our virtual town meeting, that it was very well run, very informative. So that's a positive. I think we've done a good job getting information out. Many districts are overwhelmed with phone calls to the districts and I think it's because they're not so forthcoming with the information. So I think we've been very good about getting the information out when we can. So again, I would say that as we roll forward with the plans, we continue. But I do know that meeting last week, the virtual town meeting, was very well received and very, I got a lot of positive comments on the fact that there was a lot of information given out, questions answered. So that's a positive. So I don't know if anybody else has anything else to say or comments. But stay tuned and we'll see where we go. So without any other comments on that, the next discussion item is 4.3. It's a school construction update and taxpayer impact. I'm not sure if Mrs. Boland and Ms. Boatwright are sharing the duties or one or the other would like to start the discussion.
Well, I'll start.
Okay, go right ahead.
Okay.
Beck.
We're really just, everything's gearing up right now. Due to COVID, we didn't want to overwhelm people too early and too much, but we're very excited about everything, all the things that are happening right now. And we have an independent group that's comprised of people from the community and parents, and they have a website, it's Building Newport's Future, correct, Louisa?
Yes.
And you can go to that. We also are trying to propagate our website with information. And Louisa's going to go into some of the different things. We're looking for some help from our community. And we're also going to tonight, I think the biggest news is Louisa's going to announce right now, she's probably looking at the piece of paper, what the impact will be financially for Newport residents.
Well, actually, I thought because the superintendent had asked the city, we had you do that because of COVID, because of the lack of meetings and so on. We asked you to please reach out to the city. So I think it should, maybe Colleen, Dr. Jermaine, you could read the document with the taxpayer impact, and that has the numbers, because I just think that's an important thing. And then I'll come back and talk about the other things we have going on.
Okay, sure. Wait a minute. Oh, dear. I think I'm on mute.
No, you're not.
Oh, I'm not. Oh,
we can hear you.
Okay, I have the document.
Be careful. Be careful. We can hear you.
Yeah, I had the document in front of me, and then I closed it because. Okay. Let's see. Let me get it back up. Here it is. Okay. So yes. Thank you, Ms. Boatwright.
Yes.
So I did ask the city. I did reach out to the city manager and the city finance director, and you have in the backup the projected impact of the proposed public school bonds. And actually, Ms. Citron, Director Citron, did a great job as far as making it very clear and easy to follow. So looking at getting our reimbursement at the 52.5%, and also participating in a program called Pay-Go, Ride Pay-Go. She broke it out for us, which was great of her, into different owners of different property owners. So for the fiscal year of 2022, the way the city, it appears, is now rolling this out, is there would be no impact for any, as far as the bond, increase in tax dollars based on the bond. And then if you look at your chart, it says fiscal year 2023, it then breaks it out into the total impact for the year for a person. So if I'm reading this correctly, fiscal year 2023, if you're a homeowner and you have a house worth $400,000, the impact for you during that year would be $52. If you're a homeowner and you have a house of $800,000 or more, it's $104. And if you're a property owner and your house is over 1.5 million, it would be $195 for the year. That's less than $200 per year.
So, Mrs., I don't mean to interrupt, but
that's okay.
I think it's important to point out that it's a house that's evaluated at.
The
It's not
tax
the actual price
valuation.
that house would
Right.
sell for. It's the tax evaluation.
Oh, the tax evaluation, yeah.
Right, which is oftentimes very different than what you might sell your house at, or
Oh,
what the
okay.
actual worth is.
Yeah.
All right, good
Particularly-
points. Good points. So good points. Tax, what your house is evaluated at. So that's the year 2023. In 2024, it is $68, if I'm reading that correctly, for an appraised home at $400,000. And then $800,000 home, $136, and owner of a $1.5 million house would be $255. So, and then for the last year, it would be 2025. And I think, and I did not ask for an explanation on this, but I suspect it's because something's coming off the tax rolls. But the impact of appraised house valuated at $400,000 would be $36. The owner of the $800,000 home would be $72, and the owner of the $1.5 million home would be $135. So the total projected impact, she did total that out also, would be if your home was appraised or tax valuation was $400,000. The total projected impact would be $156. Now, Ms. Bowen, Ms. Boatwright, do you agree I'm reading this chart correctly?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. And then the owner of a home appraised the evaluation is at $800,000. The total impact would be $312. And for an owner of a home of 1.5 million and above, during those years, which I'm talking about 22, 23, 24, and 25, the total impact would be $585. And
So
that's the
in fact,
impact.
it's a little different than that. So but the impact of the bond annually will be that total numbers, the 156, but the first year you get 52, then you add 68, then you add 36. So the total amount by the third year is the 156.
Correct.
You get that whole thing.
Correct.
So yeah. So, and then it goes at that. So so basically it is on the tax valuation. Thank you, Colleen, Dr. Jermaine.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And thank you. Well, really, thank you to Laura Citron for sending this to us.
Right. Because it's very clear on the amounts. So the total amount of the bond, which was, I think that was at our very last meeting in June that we had just heard, that the total bond for the two buildings is $106,334,000. The pay-go actually amount, which she refers to, is the $7.9 million, and that is really the bond, the state bond, so that they can pay early, which is what allows us to not have to pay much in the early stages of construction and design. So that bond that many Newport tax or voters voted for, that is what allows that to happen, and then defer some of these payments later on. So I want to mention that. And then what Dr. Jermaine and our team had asked for was to, as the Treasure Seth Magaziner had said, is because of COVID, you may want to extend sort of some of the payments a little bit into the third year, because after having COVID, you want to spread it out over a little bit of time. So it will ultimately be up to the city council how they actually do it and so on, but it will be very close to this. And she put it together as the projected impact. So we thank her very much. I wanted
May I say something? Okay, you're not done.
No, I'm not.
Go ahead.
Sorry. So I just wanted to also talk about, unless you want to talk about the numbers, I'm sorry. Yep. Yes, go ahead.
I do. Yeah, I want folks to understand, aside from being in the weeds of how we got to the numbers, like if you have a $400,000 home, it'll cost you 43 cents a day to help us with this project. That's what it'll cost you. If you have $1.5 million home, it'll cost you $2.50 a day for us to have an addition to Pell and a brand new high school. I think in terms of real numbers, what is that? This is it. It's literally 43 cents a day at the end of 3 years, and it is $2.50 a day at the end of 3 years for an addition at Pell and a brand new high school. And as Louisa just said, we are already paying into that because 84.1% of us have already approved the state bond. So we're already paying into that for other communities.
Right. And to
That money,
point,
let's get some of that money back into our community. So when people ask you, why do you vote for the bond? That's why we vote for the bond, because right now we're paying for other school districts and their projects. It's that money's already there. So
Right.
I just wanted, this was in terms of numbers, that's all I wanted to say.
That's very good. And you're right that there's 18 other communities that are already tapping into some of that money. So that's a very good point. But I wanted to just update, as Mrs. Boland had said, we're trying to put some information up on our website too. So as people go out and try to search for what's going on with the bond, there's going to be a post of sort of Newport School Bond fact sheet that will be posted. All of these we're hoping to have on iterations between now and the end of the month. An educational plan summary, summary of the project and the conceptual design along with timelines. The taxpayer impact, as you heard, which will make simpler to hear. A little bit about community benefit and asset. I have been working with the Working Cities Group as a member from this Newport School Committee, and they have been working. We're going to be running a program this summer that had to be postponed due to COVID, and then they're looking to do another program in the fall, which one was for young people to get exposure to different career opportunities at the Career Tech Center. And then in the fall, one for people who are 18 to 24 or older to be trained into some career areas. So it would be an asset beyond the school system using it, but community members using it. And we're trying to work on a program like that, which is very common in the state of Massachusetts, to leverage it as a real community asset. And then the last piece is we'll put on some frequently asked questions from community members. So I did want to bring up also, because many people have brought it up to me, is it's important for people to understand that Rogers and the Career Tech Center is an area school system. It has almost 100 students who are coming from other districts. We currently have about 8 districts that are sending children here, and it's all students who are asking to come to the Career Tech programs there. So, and then last I wanted to mention is that we will be, because of COVID, it's very hard to get information out to everybody. So we will probably be having just some of these information I talked about, some posters and some fact sheets just at the Stop and Shop and CVS and A Market parking lot, so people can, throughout the month of September, so people can stop by and learn more about the bond. And I think that's it. Becky, do you have other comments?
I muted off there. No, I think you covered it. We're going to be looking for help. We're going to be looking, for places to put yard signs, and all the support we can get is going to be really appreciated. And thank you for Ida Neary and your group that's doing, some of the heavy lifting.
I would, if you're on the call and you're interested in helping, I would suggest going to buildingnewportsfuture.org. That's the website, and adding your name in there, and we will contact you for volunteer opportunities. We'll contact you for volunteer opportunities. Thank you.
Okay. I think that's
that wraps it up.
Oh, Mr. Gomes?
Miss Winslow.
I just wanted to make a quick comment. Almost don't know where to begin, but I'm so grateful for Laura Citron's participation on this and just getting these numbers out. This is really, I think, the question that so many people want to have answered is, how does it impact their bottom line. And it's a really, really encouraging situation, I think. And I'm just so grateful that all this work is finally coming together into this information that people can absorb and really think about and understand. And it's very encouraging to me. And I think you guys know how badly I want this to happen. And I hope everybody who's listening wants this to happen too, and we stay involved and get this information out. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Yeah, no, I think it's important, and I think when people look at the numbers, I think they'll also realize that we almost can't afford to make it happen. So we've got some good opportunities. So hope people continue to reach out and get the information they need to help support the new school. Thanks. If there are no other questions or comments on that, we'll move into the next discussion item. The next discussion item is 4.4, and it is determining the first steps towards developing an anti-racism policy. This was put forth this evening by Ms. Winslow. I think we have a statement in our backup on her thoughts, but at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Winslow, and she can provide us her information and her thinking towards developing an anti-racism policy. So, Ms. Winslow.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll just read what I wrote to the committee, why I think this is the path we should take. And it's because I believe that many Americans still don't think that they or their country, their communities, their institutions have a problem with racism, yet we all witness inequity and ask why it still happens. I think that Newport is fortunate enough to have a very diverse population, and these voices will remind us that we are not an exception. So our choice is to either remain silent and uphold the status quo and get the same results, or to be leaders in this challenge to transform ourselves. Key to our success is re-education of adults. Adults need this work more than kids if we are ever to break the cycle. You've probably heard before that racism is taught, and it was taught to all of us, and we're only going to perpetuate it if we do not act to combat it. As education experts, I think that the schools are perhaps the most well-positioned to do this hard work. You know, we can not only be great teachers, we can be great students. So I challenge Newport Public Schools to become anti-racist, and may others follow our lead. I thought, why a policy? I think that if we invest the time and energy and get this right, a well-crafted policy will hold us all accountable to clear standards. It will serve as a blueprint for work such as updating existing policy, identifying inequity, training our staff, hiring teachers of color and teachers who have experience with anti-racist practices, creating safe spaces for students, free of retaliation, et cetera, et cetera. Why do we need a new, specifically anti-racism policy? I believe that anti-discrimination policies are vague, and they do not attempt to educate, change thoughts, behaviors, or uncover bias. I think we need to be straightforward about the existence of racism and the horrible effects it has on all of us if we are ever to conquer it. I therefore think this topic deserves its own policy. Anti-racism could become a new central tenet of our mission to educate. So what next? Because this is a massive topic. We could all spend a significant amount of time becoming scholars on it, but we won't ever have enough time. And COVID is going to dictate most of what we focus on over the next probably several months to a year at least. So my initial thoughts were to try to focus on just learning about what is and isn't happening in the school environment so that we can lay some foundations, get on the same page, start speaking the same language. There's 3 things I wanted to throw out, and I want to get your thoughts and ideas on all of them and any suggestions on more we could do. But perhaps first a small workshop between the school committee and administration and any current and former students and parents who would want to speak to us. I want it to be a welcoming environment, a safe environment, not really a spectacle. Perhaps a professional moderator or someone to lead the discussion. And really our objective as school committee members and as administration is just to listen and to empathize with the people who have the stories to share. I think that discomfort can lead to passion to make a difference. I also was hoping that we could get reports from administration, on the equity related data that we do track and can share. Also, I know that the schools have tried so much in the past few years. Dr. Germain's been really helpful sharing this information with me. So could we synthesize what has been implemented, maybe what is planned for future implementation, what has worked, what has not worked, what has been learned from all of this? And then the policy subcommittee, obviously, I think has a lot of work to do to review existing Newport Public Schools policy. I'm sure there are things that we might want to pull out and tackle, and review what other organizations have done. There are so many resources out there waiting to be listened to and tapped into. So much work has been done. We don't hear a lot about it, but there's an awful lot out there, and the internet is a great thing. So those are my thoughts. Initially, I have obviously not ever proposed a new policy, so I would like to hear the school committee's guidance on this and thoughts and where you think we are and can go. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, for those. So I see a few hands going up. I'm going to go Dr. Flowers.
Thank you. As chair of the policy subcommittee, I did go through, after discussing some of this with Ms. Winslow, I did go through and, you're searching through and you get, I don't want to say bits and pieces, but of the anti-discrimination, appropriate behavior, and so forth. And I did get into some of the area around here, looking at other school systems policy manuals, if you will, online. As much as I could delve into some of it, I didn't find any great help there. But I think what you just said about other institutions, other organizations rather, in town, and there are many people who are well versed in all of this, who have that particular talent to discuss the present situations, how to get everyone to listen. And that is one of the key points. We can hear one another, but sometimes are we active listeners? And the point that we sometimes say, well, I don't have any biases, I don't have any negative feelings, and then you find out you do, sometimes unhappily or accidentally. But I think at this point, looking at these particular issues, it would be good. I would like to see, actually, the school committee and administration, just ourselves, if the time can be found somewhere, that we can just ourselves really say, okay, how do we honestly, openly regard ourselves? Many eons ago, I was, a lot of this was coming up, and they call it sensitivity training. And probably what this would be, that you are aware of the differences among various cultures and also the similarities. And that's something that we have to keep looking at, that we see how we are different from just other people, could be about in any way, but that we recognize it, we try to understand, and we appreciate our differences, and we also look to see how what our similarities are. This might sound very noble and Pollyannish, but it's the truth. So I really thank Ms. Winslow for putting her statement together, giving us many thoughts, and I certainly would want to be part of this project, so to speak, this movement to establish a policy, because what the policy does is that it puts the teeth in whatever any of us will be doing, including the teachers, including everyone else who works with our young people, and by extension to the community at large.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or discussion? I don't could imagine there's some
I will.
more. But Ida, go right ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to thank publicly thank Stephanie for putting this discussion out in front of us, because as the current moment has taught us, we have to spend a lot of time listening, and we all have to spend a lot of time listening, and we are also learning or relearning that racism is more than a feeling. It is a set of policies and procedures that are baked into our systems. And that is why a policy, an anti-racist policy, is important, because an anti-racist policy means that we are looking at our policies and our procedures and how they affect all of our students, not just our community, not just us, the school committee, but our community. I think I will continue to suggest that and continue to email for resources, but I would suggest that if there's anything that we can do as a group of 6-7 is, and also for the administration, is to read a book, and you can choose which book you want to read. I have just finished reading How to Be Anti-Racist, and it is honestly mind-blowing, and I would suggest we read that, all of us as a group, or we read something else. Doesn't matter what we read, but we read it as a group so that when we sit down and talk, as Dr. Flowers suggested, that we do it as a group and we sit down and talk, we are grounded and rooted in the same conversation, that we are having the same conversation, that we're not having a conversation about feelings, how people feel about others, but we're having a conversation about policies and procedures, which are the things that's really what reinforces a racist system. That's what does it, right? So prior to the Loving decision, my husband and I could not have been married. That was a policy decision. That was, and then it was removed, and the Supreme Court removed it and said, no, you can marry anyone. And that is a policy decision, and it changes how people think. Changing policies actually does change how people think. We could say the exact same thing about gay marriage. So, so I agree that we as a school committee, and certainly as school administration, need to be reading resources first, so that as we're talking to each other and we talk to broader group, we understand that that genuinely racism isn't just about feelings. Feelings affect one-on-one, policies can affect the whole population, and that's what we need to get to. How do we change our school system so that its policies in and of themselves are anti-racist? And we can't get there until we know what that means for ourselves. We can't get there until our teachers know what that means. We can't get there until the administration knows what it means to be anti-racist. And again, it is separate from feelings. It is very, very much separate from how people feel about each other, or people feel about people of other color. So that's what I like to say. So thank you, Stephanie, for bringing this to the core. And my one suggestion is that we all find a common reading that we read together, and then when we have our conversation, as Dr. Flowers said, that we're having it, and we have the same definition, that we're working off of the same definition. Thank you.
I have a
Good,
question. Could you repeat the name of that book again?
It's How to Be Anti-Racist.
And it's by
Ibram Kendi. Mm-hmm.
Kendi. Okay, thank you. Just ordered it.
There you go.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I
I've
just
seen him.
Go ahead,
just
Louise.
quickly, I just want to quickly say again, I thank Mrs. Winslow or Ms. Winslow for putting this forward because as Mrs. Neary says, I've been listening and trying to learn and learning a ton. But I do think finding a similar thing that allows us to all step off into a conversation from is the best way to do that. So I think those are great steps forward. Thank you.
Very good. Yeah, again, along with everybody else, I want to thank Stephanie for bringing this up. We've discussed it several times, and again, there's a lot of facts to it, and it is, as I like to say with all these conversations, I think you're missing something if you don't feel uncomfortable when you're having the conversation. So I think if you think you're on the right track, if you have that feeling of discomfort and you don't think you're comfortable where you are, then obviously you need to have the conversation and move forward. And I think that's the important thing to realize. And I know Stephanie's done a lot of work, and I thank her and applaud her for leading us to this and encouraging us to move forward. And Ida too, the good suggestion to find the common read or something that we all come at it from the same way, because it definitely is not a time to have your feelings hurt, but work collectively to a better common goal for everybody. So I agree with all your sentiments tonight. So thank you, Stephanie. Any other questions or comments that before we go ahead, Dr. Flau? Go ahead,
Yeah.
Sandra. Yeah.
I thank Ida for that. The links to the podcast that you sent the other day. And she had commented that we might feel uncomfortable. We might feel maybe on the defensive. And it's true. And it kind of, a lot of those issues that were brought up, I could go back into my experience in the classroom and some of the other things we went through, not just necessarily on the racial issues, but cultural, economic, and so forth. But it all boils down to really that whole point of being sensitive to one another. And so I just want to thank Ida for sharing that with us too.
Very good. So I think obviously the next steps, I think we'll have to kind of come up with a framework and keep the discussion going. I think I think it will be good to keep working towards it, developing a plan, and working towards it, and regular updates as to how we're moving, I think is good. I don't know that there's any other thoughts. Certainly now is a good time to share them.
So this is Colleen.
Go ahead.
And I just shared with Becky, I did ask her to order me the book as well. But we can, I do have some PD funds that I can order the book. So if the group would like to start with this book, we can order some, and then we can take it from there. But just a suggestion. If no time like the present.
No, it certainly seems like I do agree with Ida that you need some common starting point. Yeah. So certainly it's worthwhile to get the book. And again, but I think largely Stephanie's statement and her plan lays it out. I think we can work on things. We can develop. I do think professional development, presentation. We'll keep moving and working on those things. Again, the times are difficult, so we'll do the best we can to keep it moving, keep it in the forefront, and the book is a good place to start. It sounds like.
Yeah, just one thing is that it invites reflection and self-reflection, which makes it almost impossible to not keep it in the forefront. I mean, there are a couple of chapters, and I don't remember who I was talking to, but there are a couple of chapters that hit me very hard in terms of my racist attitudes, and it really genuinely is mind blowing, and I think it's hard for me, it's hard once I read it to not keep this issue in the forefront. So, let's see. It's uncomfortable. Yeah.
I'll add that I've read it too, and I've read a few other books on this, and I mean, I'm stopped dead in my tracks most of the time, realizing how little has changed. And I, for one, am not going to stay quiet about it anymore.
No. And
good, Sandra.
Okay, thank you. I think also if people have nothing to do, go through you can go through the policies right there. It's right on the website. And there are certain ones that something might pop out to you that to say that those are the particular policies and topics that what we're talking about now should be incorporated in. Some are kind of very general, but just to go through the policy manual a bit at a time, because it can be a bit overwhelming. But I will do that myself and to see if I can find particular areas where we can slot in certain things. Okay.
I'll just make one
Go ahead,
quick,
Stephanie. Yep, absolutely. Go
quick
ahead.
last suggestion. This was Ida's idea many weeks ago. I think you gave me this idea, Ida. You listened to the book in audio version. And I decided to do that for a lot of these books because it's often the author who is reading. And it's really, really powerful to hear them speak their own words, and to not interpret it in your mind and your voice, but to hear their voice. So an audiobook is a great tool, and then you can have it on while you're making yourself dinner or whatever it might be, and you just get a little bit of reading in every day, and you get through it pretty quickly.
Great point. Thank you. Alrighty. I think we can move on. The next section that finishes up our discussion portion of the meeting and moves us into the consent agenda. First item on the consent agenda is 5.1, which is approval of the monthly minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Dr. Flowers, seconded by?
Second.
Ms. Winslow. Any discussion or questions about the minutes? Seeing or hearing none, Mrs. Nash, if you could conduct a roll call vote for approval of the minutes as presented.
Sure. Mr. Gomes?
Aye.
Ms. Neary?
Aye.
Ms. Boatright? Mrs. Boatright?
Aye, sorry. Muted.
Ms. Bolin?
Aye.
Dr. Flowers?
Aye.
And Ms. Winslow?
Aye.
Thank you. I have 6-0.
Okay, great. Next item is 5.2, request for approval of invoices and requisitions. Is there a motion to approve the invoices and requisitions as presented?
So moved.
Ida, motion, Ms. Boatright, a second. Any questions or comments on the invoices and requisitions?
I have one question, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Ms. Winslow.
Just for Mr. Gonzalez, I was wondering if any of the maybe one-time COVID expenses are going to have their own, is it like a subject? It says district right now on the invoices and requisition list, right? But like fogging machines and hand sanitizer that we hopefully don't have to purchase every single year. I don't know, just so that maybe there's a quick way for us to see, scanning through that document, what are the exceptional expenses this year? Not a requirement, but out of curiosity.
So if I may just restate what I think your question is, would you like a column that indicates that it's COVID related or not? To be simple, is that what you're asking?
Let's see. I just have it open. The department says district. But I mean, I think other things like pest control is also district. Well, pest control is a yearly recurring kind of expense.
So with regard to the listing here, the district term came from me because of the individual who entered the request for me, but primarily these have been almost 100% COVID related, with getting prepped for school, obtaining a stockpile. So I use the words district here, but I also maintain a separate chart that I'm tracking for reimbursements. So I think the answer is yes.
Okay.
It's just for the purposes of our meeting, I'm acquiring these items at this point in time, and next month it'll be a new list. Okay,
sure.
That's it.
That's fine. I guess as long as there's a quick way to pull it out and see, what those.
Absolutely, I do have those, and we're still working to finalize everything. So it's not all spent, and planning is still underway. There's a lot of things we don't know about opening of next year. So that's it for now. Thank you.
Great. Are there any other questions? All right. Seeing none, Ms. Nash, could you do a roll call vote for the approval of the reinvoices and requisitions?
Mr. Gold,
Aye.
Mrs. Neary,
Aye.
Mrs. Boatright,
Aye.
Mrs. Boland,
Aye.
Dr. Flowers,
Okay.
Aye.
and Ms. Winslow.
Aye.
Thank you. 6-0.
Next section is 5.3, and it's a request for the approval of the home instruction request and approval of that. Is there a motion to approve those as presented this evening?
So moved.
I'm gonna guess and say that was Miss Winslow and Dr. Flowers, but we'll go with that.
Yeah.
The order doesn't matter. There seem to be a few of you. So are there any questions about the approval for the home instructions? Miss Boland, go ahead.
Just that I have a comment on this. So when our superintendent does the town meeting on Thursday, the 13th, it might be really important because I feel like there's some confusion out in the public about homeschooling versus your kids are at home doing distant learning. I think we once again should make it really clear that what the difference between that is, because it's huge.
I concur.
So we can do it. We'll do it then as well. But I think if Dr. Jermaine wanted to take a minute to quickly, I think she can kind of do that very quickly, that there is a pretty distinct difference between what we approve here as homeschooling and distance learning from home. So if Dr. Jermaine wants to take a quick minute to go right ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gomes. Yes, that's a good point, Ms. Boland and Ms. Neary. You agree, because there is a big difference. Homeschooling is guided by Rhode Island regulations. So you have to fulfill certain requirements in order to homeschool. You have to apply to homeschool your children. So basically you're saying, I am making an application to homeschool my child. Here is the curriculum, and this is what I'm going to do following the Rhode Island regulations. I also am agreeing to take on the responsibility of teaching my child, or in some cases, some people get a third-party vendor or someone. But in most cases, most parents do not understand they actually have to lay out the curriculum, read the regulations, and they have to apply for approval. Distance learning is you're registered in the Newport Public Schools. The teacher is responsible for the delivery of the curriculum and instruction, and the teacher oversees the day-to-day activities, not you as a parent. So that's it in a nutshell, but I will be specific with it. I did actually, I think I sent something out to this and noted the regulation it's under to make sure people do follow the law and put in an application for homeschooling.
Great, thank you. Any questions based on what the superintendent just said? Alrighty. Seeing none, Ms. Nash, if you could do a roll call vote to approve the homeschool request as presented.
Mr. Gomes,
Aye.
Mrs. Neary,
Aye.
Wright,
Aye.
Mrs. Boland,
Aye.
Ms. Flowers,
Aye.
and Ms. Winslow.
Aye.
Thank you. That passes 6-0.
Alrighty, that's it on the consent agenda. Next is correspondence. We have no monthly correspondence. That moves us into section 7, which is reports from the superintendent and staff. And the first two, 7.1, 7.2, will be, we can turn it over to our business manager, Mr. Gonzalez, to give us those two reports and take any questions.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I don't want to be redundant because we've covered this, but maybe I can open it up for questions you have. Pick my brain if I can help you with anything, please. Come on.
I have a question.
Please.
Mr. Gonzalez, in the very last paragraph of the memo, I was confused by what you were trying to say. I remember a number of $795,000 for the CARES Act, and we would get that money, and it almost sounds like you're saying the government plugged a budget deficit with that, and but we're still going to get it, and I just want to make sure nothing has changed.
Okay, so thank you for the question. And to be clear, early on when we planned for 2021, we knew of CARES money available and allocated to Newport Public Schools in the amount of $792, and that was under the ESSA program that fell under the CARES Act. So in early June, we knew of the dollar amount, and we had a tremendous amount of unknowns. At the time, I wasn't super concerned with the ending of the current 2020 year. So it was my decision, along with the subcommittee, that we could use those dollars next year in the 2021. So we passed our budget utilizing those dollars next year for next year's funds. Now, after we made those plans for next year, passed the budget, the governor's team has decided that they needed some help with some federal dollars to fill up the shortfall on the state side. So the state, what they did was say, well, we're going to short your state aid in the amount of whatever your allocation was from the CARES dollars, and we're gonna short your state aid amount. I'm sorry.
Excuse me.
I'm just going to repeat that. We're going to short your state aid amount by this $795K, and we're going to use federal dollars for that. It just so happens in Newport Public Schools, our expenses are under our current reported revenue, so we don't have to utilize those CARES dollars to the 2021 budget. Is that clear? Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the explanation.
Glad to help.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Gonzalez from anybody? Comments, questions? Okay.
No, I mean, I guess my only question would be, any idea, inkling of when the state will pass a budget?
I've heard we would potentially hear something at the beginning of September, but that's going back 3 or 4 weeks, and then at latest is mid-September. I'm sorry, I wish I knew. I wish I could provide more, and I'd be the team will be the first to hear it. The entire committee is. If I know,
right?
Because that's like our $1 million question.
Right.
And I did talk to Rep. Abney the other day, and he said he didn't come up with any time frame. So I think there's a lot of waiting.
I believe what the governor, I mean, not the governor, the state team is kind of pausing in hope of some additional federal assistance. So I think that's their delay. And what they've done is the state aid is continued. Now we're going to get it state aid, but it won't increase at all. It's new numbers based on allocation is the same amount, but it's based on data, current data numbers, until a budget is passed.
Very good. Any
you,
other
everyone.
questions? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. That would bring us to basically the rest of the reports from the superintendent. Are there any questions on the remaining 1, 2, 3, 4 reports for the superintendent or any of the staff? If not, a motion would be in order to accept Section 7 reports from the superintendent as presented.
So moved.
Dr. Flowers, is there a second? Ms. Boatright?
Second.
Thank you. I'm assuming that there are no other questions or comments on them, as we just asked. And seeing none, if Ms. Nash could do a roll call vote to accept the reports. Oh, go ahead, Steph. I saw you. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just, I don't know if I'm too late to ask this, but attendance for this year versus last year at the end of the year, if it was, how it compared, if we think any changes are attributed to just distance learning, what your gut feeling is, what your thoughts are for how we'll handle this going through this coming year, which is going to be mostly distance learning. I hope not, but I'm afraid.
So we do have the reports. We did see some improvements, and then near the very end of the school year, we started to see it dip back down. Ms. Schlackman is finalizing the state report, so I can, Kathy, if we can just make a note, we can take last year's reports. So you have, because when I'm looking at them and signing off on them, I look at last year's and this year's. So we can put the two together so you can see that comparison.
Okay.
Yes, we have to stay on top of our students as far as participating in the instruction and making sure our instruction's more interactive when we are online. So those are things we're working towards. I did want to, may I take advantage of this situation? I did want to share with you, you're seeing in front of you right now the personnel that was hired during the summer for our extended school year. You also, over the weekend for the public, I send weekly updates to the committee. And in that, you saw a job placement program, which was our present personnel that we moved the deck chairs, as I was speaking about in the beginning. So it's not there aren't any new people. It's just the moving of the deck chairs and people taking on roles. When we did our budget, we did talk about a budget freeze and no more further hirings, but we were hoping at this point in time, we would, not budget freeze, I'm sorry, staff a hiring freeze. But we are going to get to a place in time, just so you know, we put the postings on and you have seen the positions that are still open. We'll be looking at students that are doing distance learning. I'll be talking with the administration. And then we will be looking at positions that we're going to have a teacher in front of some. So I just wanted to give you an FYI, an update on that. And I'll keep you posted, of course, through my weekly updates, as well as in the September meeting. But if we have a meeting sooner, I'll bring anything to your attention as well.
Right. And I did want to say that we had a finance subcommittee meeting today, and we have all seen that the city on their website has put in the full 1.4 million increase from the state. So I think that that's something that they are, that's how they've represented it. So I think that, it's something we should consider as well. So, because
I have
they do our book. So,
Right. I have a question, and it has to do with staffing. I'm wondering if, in order to fulfill the plans as we have them, the reentry plans, for ethics, I would think, especially at the elementary school, I am trying to figure out how we are able to de-densify the rooms we use at college and not need extra subs. Like, how are we making this work? I'm having a hard time figuring out if our classroom is let's say K-6, and we don't have enough. I mean, I guess we're doing it in such a way that there's nothing in the classroom and you could put 20 kids in there 6 feet apart, or 4 to 6 feet or whatever. Like, I'm just trying to figure out, why are we not needing more subs?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So I actually took pictures. We'll send the pictures. I go through the buildings every week, and
Yeah.
I have to thank you. I can say thank you to the plant engineers and custodians. They're doing a fantastic job. And the spacing, and Ms. Neri, there's only, like, for instance, at the high school, there's
Right.
only 12 or 13 desks in a room at a time. And
Okay.
at the elementary schou, and I don't know if Principal Westman's still on, but I think the most she has in a classroom, maybe, it's maybe, I don't know, 15. I can't remember. That was very early this morning. I can't remember the number she gave me, but I will have that. So we have decluttered, we have streamlined all the classrooms. We have marked out a teaching area at the front of the classrooms, and we'll continue to do that throughout all our buildings. And our custodians have done an amazing job replacing tables and chairs. And I will get those pictures to you, because if you saw the amount of desks and chairs, and Mr. Gonzalez has to see this, that they have upheld to be put in storage.
No.
The principal couldn't even believe they had that many desks and chairs in the building. So we are clearing a lot out of those rooms.
But I guess that is I didn't express myself properly. That is the question. So if the maximum we can put in a classroom is 15, because we figured out, right, with the spacing is 15, and 20, I'm going to go with the 25 is our upper limit, not in kindergarten, but 25 is our upper limit. Where is those extra 10 children going if you have a full class? That's the part that's where I'm stuck.
Yep. And that's where we're still working out. We have an admin meeting this week. So we're talking about synchronous, asynchronous instruction.
Right.
We're also talking about teachers that are requesting possibly not returning because of personal reasons or whatnot. And we still have to have a bigger conversation with everyone on how we'll do distance learning and how's it going to look at each level, so we can clearly explain that to parents.
Yeah.
And most likely what's going to happen is it may be that some teachers, that's all they're going to be doing. And we'll have a specific type of best practices as far as how we'll implement that distance learning. And those children will be with the distance learning, possibly. I have not had the full discussion with my teams.
Right, but I'm still stuck in a second grade classroom that has, I'm going to be generous, that has 23 students. So we're not at the limit, but the classroom itself can only hold 15. And if they're all returning, how are we figuring out who's the 15 and who's teaching the others? I know I understand the synchronous and asynchronous, but are those children then staying home, the 7 who can't fit in the room? That is the part I am stuck on.
So today, the principals started
quicksand.
taking.
I appreciate it's quicksand. I know.
Yeah, they took the lists and they're starting to assign students to classrooms that they know that are coming in. We may not be adding the children that are in distance learning to those classrooms. I don't know. That's what we're still talking about. So that's what we need to go over. So the answer is, I don't know. And I hope to know more by the end of the week.
I guess I'm still stuck in that third grade classroom. Let's say there are 22 students and all of them said they're coming back. We cannot fit them in their physical classroom.
Right. Well, I think they're doing the lists now based upon who said what.
Who said what?
Yeah.
So we're really hoping for some people to say distance learning.
I
mean, it's an awful
Yes.
thing to say, but yes.
Yeah.
Right, because that's where I've been stuck the whole time. And I'm sorry I'm taking time, but that's where I've been stuck in terms of how are we fitting the children? And if we're going to be doing it all at the same time, why aren't we asking for more subs? Which, and as I understand budget, so which is why I asked the question about staffing. I was trying to figure that out.
It's just
Or
the
subs
sub.
or
Sub, I can't figure out how it works without spreading the stable groups. Someone hasn't been able to explain that to me. I keep asking that question, and nobody can explain it to me. Even if I have 2 to 3 in a building, they're still going to be all over the place.
They're gonna be all over
Even
the
with
place.
my colleagues, I'm trying to. So
Right.
how are you going to do that? I don't get that. So that's why I'm asking all teachers right now. Plan everything in distance learning, and then we still have a lot to figure out.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm sorry. It
Oh, no,
was a
that's
staffing
okay.
question that
The chair's
that-
not going to let me speak near the end anymore.
it's like, can we please be done? Yes, we can be done.
We
Sorry.
can talk all night. Don't bother me.
Well, oh, that's
You
because your kid's no longer in like high school.
You got 40 minutes. You can talk all you guys want. Doesn't bother me at all. Sandra, I think Sandra had a question.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering, asking Colleen, like say there are some teachers who probably will be home for various reasons. And would they be team teaching with a specific teacher, or has that not been addressed? Or
That list is not even complete because Mr. Gonzalez is smiling over there. We've had early morning discussions. He's going to be doing some discussions with the requests because I don't get involved in that. That's very confidential. There's no reason for me to know those health reasons. So yeah. So we just want to make sure everyone's comfortable and feels safe. That's important.
Yeah, and sometimes these ideas will just come out and it just might work out.
It may.
We hope.
We don't
That's
know.
it. There's something good comes out of everything. Says she. Hopefully. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns? I think where we were at before we got into a little more discussion was approving the minutes or approving the reports as presented. So Mrs. Nash, if you could do a roll call vote.
Mr. Gomes,
Aye.
Mrs. Neary,
Aye.
Ms. Boatright,
Aye.
Ms. Boland,
Aye.
Dr. Flowers,
Aye.
and Ms. Winslow.
Aye.
Thank you. 6-0.
Excellent. Suggested meeting dates and agenda items, section 8 is next. I'm sure there'll be other meetings that'll come up, but the only meeting as of now is Tuesday, September 15th. It's a Newport Regular School Committee meeting. That is on the third Tuesday of the month because it is primary day on the second Tuesday, September 8th. So I believe we've moved it 1 week because of the primary. So that's the only meeting date on the agenda item as of now. There are no executive sessions scheduled for this evening, so a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Also,
So I have Miss Winslow and Dr. Flowers, I believe. I'm sure that there's no discussion on that. So if we want to do a simple voice vote to adjourn, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Say aye.
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 Any nays? The ayes have it. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. Enjoy your evening.
All right.
bye-bye.
All right. See you all.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, Claire.